and being released?
So first of all, I think it's a U-turn from a political sense, where Donald Trump recognizes that there's still opportunity for him to not release everything. So what's happening is that he has come out finally, and he has said that I will support a bill that forces me to do what I could do today. Because he could call the Department of Justice, he could call the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and ask that the files be released today. Instead, he's saying that he supports Congress to have a vote, which then has to go to the Senate. And then, if they pass it, it goes back to Donald Trump, and he can sign it or veto it. But because he's also requested that the Department of Justice launch an investigation into the Democrats that have been associated with Jeffrey Epstein, there may then be an opportunity when the bill comes back to Donald Trump, if it passes through the House and the Senate, then he can say, no, I can't sign it because there is an ongoing investigation.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Gemma, but I'm not quite sure that I would agree with that line, Michael, because I think Donald Trump has seen how politically damaging the releasing or not releasing of the Epstein files has been. And we've had this drip, drip, drip feed of the Epstein emails that have now come out. There was no smoking gun in it regarding Donald Trump. So far, no smoking gun. And he's always denied any links at all when it comes to the story and any wrongdoing. But I think Donald Trump has now realised that when he campaigned, his voter base, the MAGA base, was all on releasing these Epstein files, on being transparent. This hasn't happened. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a complete and utter loyalist to the MAGA movement, and Donald Trump has broken ranks to talk out about how the survivors deserve these files to be released. So I'm not sure. I think Donald Trump will go ahead and release them and try to clear his name. I'm not sure what both of you think about that argument.
If that's the case, then why not do it today? Why go through the vote in the House and then the vote in the Senate? So, I also think, sorry, I want to just say this as well, is that while he campaigned, he said he would release them.
Yeah.
And now that he's in a position to look at them, he's not releasing them. That might not indicate anything, but it looks bad. Yeah. And from a political point of view, optics matter so much.
And that's where I think he realised that this is a necessary thing that needs to happen, because the optics do not look good. And it doesn't look good on the Epstein files. And I think everyone would agree with that. And I think that's why Donald Trump would probably go to release them. But he did say a lot of the reason they didn't want to release these files is because they wanted to protect the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and the victims. But obviously, they've been speaking out today. Gemma, Larry Summers. He's an interesting case. He's now stepped back from his public role. Tell us a little bit more about what's been going on with Larry Summers, a Democrat, Larry Summers is.
Yes, and we had Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is obviously, we spoke last week about taking, the fall for a lot of this. Larry Summers is not sort of a global name the way that the former Prince Andrew is. So I'm interested in who's falling or who's kind of catching a lot of flack in the Epstein files. It's very interesting to me. Now, he is the former Harvard University president and the former US Treasury Secretary under Clinton and very briefly Obama. Now, he has said he's going to step back from, quote, public commitments after his emails with Epstein were made public. Now, this doesn't mean he's going to step back from teaching at Harvard. But Michael made a really interesting point before the show, which was, because Summers wants to carry on teaching. You said if he goes to teach and it's a co-ed class, you wonder how many people in that class might get up and walk out. And Harvard does not want that. They've already gone through the whole having their funding, Trump threatening to take the funding away, all of this. So it's very interesting. He is not resigning. He is not leaving. He's stepping back from public commitments, but he still wants to continue teaching, and we'll see how that plays out. He has said he's deeply ashamed of his actions. Now, what these emails showed is that he was communicating with Epstein after the Epstein's 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor. So even after that, he still carried on talking. And up to the day before Epstein's 2009 2019 arrest for the alleged sex trafficking of minors. This is a very long relationship. Now, I don't want to make light of the situation at all, but the email exchange between Epstein and Summers is what the kids today would call absolute cringe. You have Epstein talking to Summers, who was 70 at the time. They're talking about women. They're talking about Summers' dating life. They're talking about Summers having a crush or a relationship on someone that he worked with. It is such a fascinating insight into how these two apparent titans of their worlds were communicating over email like something you would find on a teenage WhatsApp. So, you know, it's the things that are coming out here are fascinating, but I'm so interested in seeing which people are going to be taking the fall.
And I think that's the question that a lot of people are currently asking at the moment. Who's going to take the fall? What more is going to come out in these Epstein files? But just a quick one, because we're out of time, but Prince Andrew, he's been seen riding his horse, apparently. Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the former prince, he's been seen riding his horse, and he's also been accused of being in hiding, but probably rightly so.
Yeah, and I think, as we did actually say this a few weeks ago, he's not going to hide. He's always maintained his innocence. He likely sees there's no reason for me to hide away. He's out there, you know, he's going to be riding his horse through Windsor Great Park as he sees fit. This is someone who's evidently, you know, from what we know from sources, has never been told no, so he's not really going to start listening to that word now.
Lack of self-awareness. You have to be able to read the room, and in his case, read the world. And everybody is 100% interested in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
The former Prince Andrew is the closest that anybody can get to somebody who would have been a guilty culprit. And yet he doesn't seem to have the awareness to understand that it would probably be best for him not to be hidden away for 7 weeks, as has been the case recently, but to maybe go away for a year or two and to keep an incredibly low profile. But as you said, he is somebody who has not been told no too often, and that just doesn't seem to be in his way of thinking.
A convicted murderer who's serving a life sentence in Australia has decided to challenge a ban on prisoners consuming Vegemite. The savoury spread has become a polarising national symbol for the country. Andre Makechi argues the ban on prisoners having it behind bars in the state of Victoria denies him the right to enjoy his culture as an Australian. OK, Dr. Ellie, before we get into this whole story, your family are in Australia. Explain to us what Vegemite is and why it's such a cultural icon all the way down under.
Well, first, it's a kind of a paste that is made out of yeast, some vegetable extract, and simply some salt and some spices. It is definitely spreadable. The best way of eating it is over a toast with a bit of butter, and that's it. It's practically part of the daily breakfast of so many Australians. And as statistics show, up to 80% of Australian households do have it in their home. The point in it is, I think, what I discovered today actually was that it is not that old in the history of Australia. But then all of Australia is not that old. It has been invented in 1923. And then the company, due to the success and the death of the founder and so on, was bought by Kraft for so many years. And then in 2017, we declared victory by bringing it back to Australia with an Australian company regaining it. It's simply part of the lifestyle. It's simply part of the culture. However, you do have the tendency of either loving it or hating it, and very few people are in between. I am, unfortunately, on the side of those haters.
Dr. Ellie,
I don't like Vegemite.
I absolutely love Vegemite. I'm actually on the side of the lovers of Vegemite. Well, but Esther, this story is actually, let's get to the nitty-gritty of it. Right now, we have a prisoner in jail serving a sentence, trying to sue because he wants Vegemite. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but can it really be a cultural right?
When you put it this way, Leigh Ann, come on.
No, but we have. But that's.
I think I will do you one further. He is a criminal serving a sentence for murder, talking about his human right to Vegemite, which is the greatest irony because he apparently didn't think much of the person he murders human rights or right to life. But just parking that aside, I think as comical as this is to sue the government for the right to eat Vegemite, which again, I think they really need to consider what they spend money on in terms of legal aid, because this is absolutely ridiculous. This lawsuit has cost a lot of money working its way up through the courts. The reason why the state of Victoria has banned Vegemite in its prisons is there are two reasons. One, it's because it contains yeast, and there's a concern that inmates may use it to brew alcohol, which is obviously a substance that can be abused, especially in the context of a prison. The prison is not the place to be getting inebriated. It's a place for punishment and rehabilitation, not a place to have a sort of booze party. And the second point is inmates that are carrying illegal drugs, like marijuana, for example, use Vegemite to mask the scent of these drugs. And apparently it affects the drug sniffer dogs that are routinely deployed in these prisons to sniff out any drugs or contraband in the area. So there are actual real concerns. And they mainly due, obviously, they're mainly due to the fact that prison has to be a prison. It has to be a place of punishment and rehabilitation, but also for the safety of the staff, the prison wardens, who find it harder to control a prison population that are under the influence of drugs like alcohol or illegal drugs. So as amusing as this is, I mean, you hear of cases like this all the time. In Norway, for example, in Norwegian prisons, internet is actually a human right. So you have one of the most heinous mass murderers, Anders Breivik, who's effectively serving a life sentence, even though the Norwegian penal system is a bit more complicated. He has access to a PS5 and a game and TV and the internet because apparently it's his human right to sit there and wallow in his heinous crimes. That's not really the same. I mean, we're going to see the limits of that phrase, human rights, in the Australian penal system, but it doesn't quite work out the same way there.
Dr. Ellie,
Strongly disagree.
You strongly disagree. I strongly agree.
Yeah.
I just don't think that somebody has the right to use all this money, all this legal aid for a crime like murder to sue the system.
See, I agree on this. I definitely agree that, as Esther said, we have seen so much abuse of prisons, of legal systems, of legal aid, of public funds. I agree with all of that. I don't agree with two main things that Esther mentioned. I do believe strongly that even a murderer, even the worst murderer, still has human rights. And nobody's allowed to take away his human rights. And the second most important thing is that prisons are a place for rehabilitation. And we cannot simply give up on any individual because, again, every individual is the result of his society, his bringing up.
But he's serving a life sentence. Is there any point trying to rehabilitate someone who's going to die in prison? He's serving a life sentence for a crime that in other countries, in places like Singapore and Japan, he may very well have been given the death penalty.
Well,
and I think human rights is all well and good, but human rights are inalienable. So the right to life and the pursuit of happiness and property, that does not include making taxpayers pay for your love of Vegemite. I think that's a bit of a stretch.
Agreed on the spending taxpayers' money. Not agreed on death penalty. I'm strongly against death penalty. But then again, the issue of Vegemite could have been better managed, as simple as that. The management of the prison could take the necessary measures, either to avoid any drugs or importing the Vegemites itself or whatever other measures. It is there to manage the prisons in the best way possible with the safest thing possible for all the people who are caring for these people. But again, for me, even if the person has done the worst crimes, he still needs to enjoy his basic human rights, his right to freedom of religion and the practice of that religion in prison, his choice of food to a certain extent, definitely within the norms of the prison. He is allowed to, again, have all his basic rights of health, of learning, of all of that. I'm all for this, to make the prison definitely a rehabilitation, even if he is on death row. The exploitation was definitely suing the government for Vegemite is nonsense. It's taking it way too far, but does not make me rethink or question the fact that every inmate, no matter how severe his crime is, should enjoy all his human rights within the proper understanding of what human rights are.
And I think that that lively debate between you and Esther just highlights why the story has made headlines all over the world, because very many people feel very strongly about the human rights that people doing life sentences for murder actually have in prisons. And I think both of you highlighted that. So thank you so much for your thoughts on that. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and, of course, also follow us on X. We'll be back on Monday. Goodbye.
We have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first.
For in-depth analysis and all the latest developments across the globe, make sure you join us every weekday.
President Trump is trying to negotiate a ceasefire.
With so much happening, so much information, and so much noise,
International law will have no part in his administration.
it can be hard to keep track.
Tariffs will just fuel inflation.
We're going to fight these tariffs.
But you can count on us to tell you what you need to know.
We stand by your side.
Join me, Tom Burges Watson, for Global News Today, right here on Al Arabiya News. Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive interviews with leading experts every weekday here on Al Arabiya English. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up today, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is given a full red carpet welcome by the US President Donald Trump as he begins his visit to Washington. We ask a number of geopolitical experts, what do both sides want to get out of this visit? Plus, we ask the former US ambassador to Riyadh for his take on the state of relations between the two countries. Hello and welcome to the programme. We begin in Washington, where Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman today began a high-profile visit. Well, in a sign of the close ties between the two countries, the US President Donald Trump gave him a lavish welcome at the White House. Well, President Trump has praised the 40-year-old Crown Prince, calling him a very wise friend and saying that he's doing a spectacular job. In particular, he noted the Crown Prince's leadership and Vision 2030 reforms. Well, this visit highlights Saudi Arabia's global influence and the long-standing US-Saudi partnership, with talks focusing on defence, energy, investment and advanced technology cooperation. Well, we're joined now by Michael Ratney, who is the former US ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Ambassador Ratney, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to Al Arabiya English. The United States and Saudi Arabia have this 8-decade-long diplomatic relationship. What's your interpretation of what the state of that relationship is right now?
So thanks for having me on this morning. I think the relationship is in pretty good shape. Over those 8 decades, there's certainly been some ups and downs. In the course of the Biden administration, it went down and then it got much, much better. During the Trump administration, I think in substance, it's quite good. And also, it seems like President Trump and the Saudi Crown Prince have a remarkably warm rapport. And I think that's probably what we'll see on display in Washington today.
Right, yeah, I was going to ask you about the relationship between the two men. And as you said, it's an extremely strong relationship. In an article penned in the New York Times, you wrote that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has made advances once thought unimaginable. And I'd like to ask you, since you served in Riyadh until the start of the year, what are the main changes that you've observed in Saudi Arabia during the past decade?
The changes are sort of in two categories. Economic, there's a huge economic diversification effort going on, and also societal. And I think for somebody that visited Saudi Arabia 5, 10, 15 years ago, and then again in this recent period, that's the most dramatic change that you see. It's the most palpable thing. Saudi was famous for women being marginalized in society, for example. And now you go and Saudi women are everywhere. They're in the workforce in large numbers. They can drive. They can basically control their lives in ways that they never could before. So I think that's the most obvious thing when you step off a plane and visit the country. But there's a lot of other things as well. Saudi was never a country where you had an arts and culture scene, for example. And now there's movie cinemas and concerts and art exhibitions in a way that were once not only unheard of, but actually illegal in the country.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really striking when you look at the demographics of Saudi Arabia, that 70% of the population is under the age of 35. And here we're talking about the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's just turned 40. I mean, do you attribute much of the change in Saudi Arabia to him personally and the fact that he is a leader really quite close in age to his population?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he marks the generational shift in the leadership, although he's obviously not king yet. I think he eventually will be. All of the other kings of Saudi Arabia have been sons of the founder of Saudi Arabia, and this will be the first grandson of the founder, the first generational shift. And I think part of that, he understands the demographic that he represents. Saudi's a fairly young country, and they have the ambitions of young people. They want to be normal. They want recreation. They want jobs. They want all of those things. And I think he understands that in a really kind of palpable sense.
And Ambassador, President Trump has clearly pulled out all the stops for this visit and rolled out the red carpet. What's your interpretation of what he and the American administration wants out of this visit?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because a lot of what we've read is what Saudi Arabia wants from the United States. But obviously, President Trump has some expectations, too. I think he'll talk about normalization, the prospect of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, although I don't think that's in the cards right now. I think it's something that President Trump has ambitions for. I think the president has ambitions for large investments from Saudi and elsewhere in the Gulf into the United States. I think some of the numbers I've heard have been enormous in the billions and billions of dollars, and I think he'd like to announce that. And he'd like to announce commercial deals, you know, the prospect of U.S. defense sales to Saudi Arabia, for example. He just mentioned yesterday that the F-35 would be something that would be offered to Saudi Arabia. So I think for him, there's a personal component to it, but also I think he sees this in starkly commercial terms. He sees this as kind of economic opportunity for the United States.
And prior to serving in Riyadh, I gather you were the U.S. chargé d'affaires at the U.S. Embassy in Israel. And I'm wondering how much discussion you expect President Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to have about the Israel-Palestinian issue.
Oh, I don't think it'll be a part of the public discussion, but I think privately, I'm sure they'll talk about it. I'm sure the Saudis, like others in the region, are relieved that, at least for now, we're in a period of ceasefire. And there's a prospect. The UN Security Council resolution passed yesterday authorizing a security force. So there's some forward momentum. And I think for the Saudis, that's all for the good. You know, the Saudis are looking to de-escalate the conflicts in the region so that they can focus on what they're doing internally. And I think that will be part of the discussion with President Trump. I also think the president, as I mentioned, will talk about the prospect of Saudi's relationship with Israel at some point. I think until we're in a better place with respect to Gaza, I don't think the Saudis are going to consider that. But I think in the long term, it still remains a possibility.
And what message do you think Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman brings to Washington in this regard?
I think, you know, their message publicly for a while, and I think that'll be reiterated today, is to really get past where we are in Gaza at this point. The Saudis, and I think other Arabs as well, they want to see the Israeli Defense Forces out of Gaza completely. Right now, they're occupying half of the Strip and still essentially control life there. I think they want to see an end to Israeli military involvement in Gaza. And then politically, they want to see a path forward, at least towards the prospect of a Palestinian state. And that would require an Israeli government commitment in that direction. And at this point, the Israelis haven't been willing to talk about either thing, either a complete withdrawal from Gaza at this point, or the prospect of a Palestinian state. And I think the Crown Prince is going to make that clear to the president, that those are the requirements that they've had publicly, and they're reflective of the sentiment in his country and the sentiment throughout the region.
And how much do you think that red line and this insistence on a Palestinian state, to what extent do you think that will shape President Trump's approach to this issue?
I think he knows it. He understands it. I think he'll push. I think in a way it may give him greater incentive to push Netanyahu further on these issues. You know, I think it was through Trump's pressure on Netanyahu that got us to a ceasefire and a hostage release. It got us as far as we've come now in the past couple of weeks. And I think President Trump will see in rather clear terms what's going to be required if they want to move ahead to this prize that he's so anxious for.
And clearly these last 12 months have been 12 months of enormous change in the region from which I'm speaking to you. And one of the things that I think a lot of people found was a real watershed moment for the Gulf in particular was the Israeli strike on Doha in September. And I'm wondering how much of a game changer you think that strike was. What do you think came out of that?
So I think it was a shock to the region, certainly to the Qataris, but also to everyone else in the Gulf, the Emiratis, the Saudis. I think every country of the GCC was shocked to see that happen. And I think it reinforced, in a sense, among some countries, certain doubts about the United States as a reliable security partner. And on the one hand, I think those doubts became clearer. On the other hand, the reaction was not to sort of withdraw from their desire for a stronger security relationship with us. I think what they want is greater clarity in that security relationship with us. I think that's going to be a big part of the discussions today with the Saudis. I think they recognize that their long-term security prospects are best with a strong U.S.-Saudi partnership. I think they're just going to want absolute clarity in that. That's why the Saudis have been pushing for something more than just a defense agreement. They've wanted a mutual defense treaty, something that in our system would require ratification by the U.S. Senate. I don't think that's possible right now, but I think they're going to use this opportunity to press Trump for the strongest possible commitments to Saudi defense.
Now, during the years 2015 to 2017, you served as the U.S. Special Envoy for Syria. Now, that's another country that's had undergone enormous change the last 12 months. And it seems to be very much on the radar of both the US and the Saudi leadership. And I'm wondering why you think Syria is such a focus for those two countries.
So I think for Saudi, it's clear. You know, Saudi Arabia regarded the war in Syria that went on for at least 12 or 13 years is just a losing proposition, right? It was bad for the Syrians. It was bad for the region because it stoked radicalization. It brought, Iranian influence into the region. It triggered population flows. It was all bad. And I think the Saudi approach at this point is just whether or not these conflicts are resolvable is an open question. What they'd like to do is just de-escalate them, eliminate to the extent they can the pernicious effects of these conflicts. And Syria was the best example of that. Even before Assad fell, I think the Saudi objective had just been to de-escalate the conflict and return to some sort of an uncomfortable status quo. With Assad gone, it created a new opportunity. It created risks, obviously, because the gentleman that took over in Syria is somebody with a difficult past. He comes from a jihadi background. There were grave doubts about the direction he would take the country. But I think they saw positive signals from what he was saying and what he was doing. And I think from the Saudi perspective, that's worth taking a chance on. It's better than the alternative because for them, the alternative is basically chaos. So they took a chance with him. They want to invest in him. They urged President Trump to do the same, and that means opening up the economy, dropping the huge web of sanctions that the U.S. and other countries have put in place, and basically, rather than ostracizing the Ahmed al-Sharaa, to at least try to embrace him and move him in the right direction. So I think that's where the Saudis were coming from, and I think that was impressed upon President Trump when he visited Riyadh a few months ago. I don't know whether President Trump came into that with any great preconceptions about Syria. If anything, I think he just wanted nothing to do with it. But I think between his conversations with the Saudi crown prince and probably with the Turkish president as well, he came to the same view, which is engage, let the economy breathe, give this guy a chance.
Okay, and just lastly, I just want to ask you, having served as US ambassador to Saudi Arabia, for any anecdotes, any memories that strike you about the degree to which the country has changed in the last few years? I know you left in January of this year. I expect you've been going to Saudi Arabia for many years. What was most striking about the Saudi Arabia you left behind you in January of this year versus the Saudi Arabia you knew perhaps a decade or so ago?
You know, the biggest change is the one I mentioned a moment ago. They're just the role of women in society. I would sit with Saudi women who were describing to me their experiences, and you would swear they're telling you about the stories about how their mother or their grandmother used to live years and years ago. But that's not the case. These are Saudi women, often in their late 20s, telling you about their experiences in their early 20s. And now you see them embracing these economic opportunities, taking a role in society, being every bit as hardworking and ambitious as anybody in that country. And it's really remarkable. And it actually has nothing to do with how they dress. That's sort of the most superficial thing that people in the United States tend to focus on. It's their role. It's what they're doing. It's where they're working. It's the jobs that they're taking. It's such a palpable change.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, you know, you say that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been very much a part of that, partly by virtue of the fact he's of the same generation as the majority of the Saudi population. Just lastly, what's the photo opportunity, the big moment that you think perhaps will immortalize this visit in terms of photography?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's going to be the Crown Prince and President Trump with very big smiles on their face when they're announcing something. And I don't know whether it's going to be in the area of artificial intelligence or defense or energy or any of the things that they're doing. I think that sort of personal rapport that the two of them have will come through loud and clear.
Okay, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Michael Ratney, former US ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks for the invitation.
Well, let's get more now. We're joined by Dr. Amr Fakhoury, who is a professor of international law at the American University in the Emirates. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thank you for having me here today. Thank you.
As we've been saying, red carpet treatment for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, President Trump calling Saudi Arabia a great ally.
That's right.
What are your observations about the US-Saudi relationship?
That's right. That's right. Well, actually, this is very important and significant visit for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the United States. This visit, I think, should be seen as a continuation to President Trump's earlier visit to the Middle East and his particular meeting in Riyadh back in May. So that visit was a turning point. It opened the gate for a bilateral relation between the two capitals. And now the visit of His Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the state it comes as a follow-up to that important meeting. It aims to translate the promises and understanding that held at Riyadh into concrete action. In other words, what has been held in Riyadh at that time will be now moved to Washington in order to create concrete relationship between two countries and in order to have more roadmap between the two capitals.
Right, so we're almost exactly 6 months, aren't we, since their meeting in Riyadh. And clearly the personalities of the two men in question play a part here. President Trump, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. How do you think their personalities drive and shape the relationship? Actually,
this is a very interesting question. Actually, the relation between the two capitals, it's very strong. And these capitals should take into consideration also the moment, actually, because the moment that the moment it's very sensitive and it's very, very special. And, since the relation between the two leaders are very strong, so that will help the region in order to build more concrete action for the region. I believe that our region is going through big changes, either in Yemen, in Palestine, in Syria, in Lebanon, and even for the countries who decided to repositioning themselves after the recent conflict. So the relation between the two leaders actually will help actually in order to shape the relation in the Middle East and in order to have more peace, more security, more prosperity, more development for the countries. So since we are talking about the timing is very important. So I think now the two leaders, they decided to open the gate for a new era of collaboration. The agenda of the meeting, it's very, very vast. They will not talk only about politics. They will talk about different subjects. They will talk about energy. They will talk about investment. They will talk about AI. They will talk about the challenges at the Middle East. So, and how to limit the influence of some countries, especially Iran.
Sure. I mean, we'll come on to some of those points in a moment, but I just want to pick up on what you were saying there, which is essentially, if this relationship between Washington and Riyadh is strong,
right,
you're saying it's going to have a repercussion beyond Saudi Arabia, but across the whole region.
No doubt. Actually, the leaders today will not talk about only the bilateral relation. They will also cover some other aspects in the region, especially the challenges and the changes in the Middle East. Actually, it's very important that the two leaders to be on the same page, and this is very important idea, and be sure that their collaboration and their partnership remains strong and well coordinated. So I think there is very interesting message behind this visit, which is Saudi Arabia is not only a regional power; it's also a global player that ready to work with ready to work with the American administration, either Republican or Democratic. Either they are ready to work with all in order to promote, as I mentioned, prosperity and peace for not only for the GCC country but also to the Middle East. No doubt. Two leaders will discuss some regional topics, such as how to work together in order to limit the influence of Iran in the region without opening the door for a new conflict, because as we all aware that Saudi Arabia, they want stability. They don't want confrontation with us. They want to keep the diplomatic channels open with everyone. So this is a very important topic that they will discuss, how to limit the Iranian influence to the region. So we should not also forget that there is, our region is too hot, and the peace process in the Middle East, it's very complicated. So for that reason, they will discuss this difficult topic, which is the peace process, and how to deal also with the Iranian influence, how to deal with the reconstruction of Gaza, how to deal with the reconstruction in Syria, and even maybe the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. So both leaders will not only talk about bilateral relation, they will talk for sure about the regional topic that it seems that they will shape the future of their relationship.
Yeah, and just going back to what we were saying at the beginning about how this is the follow-up,
right,
6 months on from the Riyadh meeting, at which we saw the Syrian president, Ahmed al-Shara, really being embraced by President Donald Trump, bringing Syria out of Iran and Russia's sphere of influence and very much into Saudi Arabia and America's. I mean, that's a key and significant diplomatic achievement, isn't it, for Riyadh and Washington?
Exactly. Actually, Syria will be at the heart of this meeting. You know that Syria, during the last 14 years, passed from civil war. Now they are going to stability, and Saudi Arabia played very important role and constructive role in order to open the gate for Syria to join the international community, to join the Arab League, to join the United Nations. Again, you know that Syria, for more than 50 years, it was suspended from international relation. Now the door is open because of the influence and the relationship between Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the leaders in Saudi Arabia with Americans. No doubt that this is a very positive advantage for Syria and for the region in general. I think now we can observe that Syria they joined the international community because of that kind of influence made by His Highness Crown Prince.
Yeah, and last week we were talking about President al-Shara's visit to Washington on this channel.
That's it.
And of course, that being a product of the talks that happened in Riyadh back in May. And when we were having that conversation and analysing that situation, some of our commentators said to us that a stable Syria meant a stable region. Do you agree with that?
100%. Stable Syria means a stable region. Syria now, they are facing very big challenges. And one of the challenges that Syria are facing right now, it's international economic sanction made either by the United Nations or by the American administration. And back in May, we remember that American president, he decided to remove all the economic sanctions. But, one of the economic sanctions called Caesar Act. And Caesar Act, this is very tough and severe clear economic action and sanction against Syria. And unfortunately, it's not only by executive order will be removed. We need the intervention of American Congress, because this law has been established by the Congress, so the Congress should remove this sanction. And I think, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will discuss with the American leader about how to work together in order to remove all kinds of sanctions, especially the Caesar Act, because without removing Caesar Act, actually joining the international community by Syria, I think it would be very, very, very difficult. The most important thing is to solve the economic problem, and this is one of the topics that I believe will be on the table between the two leaders.
Okay, and another thing that's really changed the dynamic in this region was the Israeli airstrike on Doha back in September.
Right.
How much of a shock was that, do you think, for the Gulf region? And how do you think that's changed perceptions about regional security and perhaps something that will be discussed again between President Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman?
Yes, exactly. Actually, after the aggression made by Israel against Doha, let me first of all clarify this is a clear violation of international law, clear violation of the United Nations Charter, and a clear violation of international norm. It's a clear aggression. We cannot say more than this. It's a clear violation. And we remember that there is a discussion between American leader and the Emir of Qatar about this aggression, and later we received that message that it seemed that there is a clear excuse from the Israeli for the Qatari about this aggression. You know that one of the topics that will be discussed at the American summit today, Saudi American summit, will be about the military collaboration between the two leaders. The military collaboration in terms of fighting terrorism, in terms to bringing peace to the region, in terms of fighting even cyber threat. So military collaboration, military defense between two leaders will be one of the topics that will be discussed by the two leaders. And it seems that the Saudi Arabia, they want something similar to the agreement that has been signed between Qatari and American, a kind of collaboration. I don't want to reach to the point like Article 5 from NATO. You know, Article 5, it's a collective defense. I don't think we would reach to this point, but however, I think that the military collaboration between two countries will go further, and I think they will sign something similar to the agreement or a treaty that signed between Qatari and Americans.
And ahead of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Washington, President Trump announced that, yes, indeed, we will be selling, he said, F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. And until now, Israel's been the only country in the Middle East to have those F-35s. How significant is this?
Yeah, you know that when we are talking, when we're about to talk about this kind of airplanes, this is very strong and airplanes, and the only country in the region that have this or possess this kind of airplanes is Israel. So we need to balance between we need kind of balance in the region, and buying this kind of aircraft to Saudi Arabia, I think that will help in order to make a balance in the region. I know that this needs the approval from the Congress, not only from the American administration, because this is a legal question. Because usually buying this kind of aircraft needs the approval of the Congress. And we should not forget that previously there is a very important law signed by the Congress gives the priority for Israeli in order to have this kind of weapons, if you may say that. So this kind of aircraft will maybe balance the situation in the Middle East. Maybe that will bring stability, I think, to the region.
One of the points you were making earlier, discussions about the situation in Gaza, Saudi Arabia's position on a future Palestinian state.
Yes.
President Trump is expected to somehow address this issue of broadening the Abraham Accords.
That's right.
And seeking Saudi Arabia's normalization of ties with Israel.
That's right.
But Saudi Arabia seems to be saying not yet. Why?
Okay, let me clarify regarding the peace process first of all. Actually, Saudi Arabia played very important role in order to push and to bring stability in the Middle East, and they also supported the Palestinian cause to create their country. And we remember all the efforts made by Saudi Arabia while they decided, in collaboration with France, to hold very important conference, if you remember, held at the umbrella of the United Nations. United Nations, the organization that is his main or their duty is to maintain international peace and security. So after this conference, the message of that conference was clearly creating two states. State is the living side by side, Israeli state and Palestinian state is the only viable and way in order to have comprehensive and lasting peace in the Middle East. And I know that the Americans, they want, Saudi Arabia wants to join the Abraham Accord, and even the American president himself, he said that they want Saudi Arabia to join Abraham Accord. But let me clarify that Saudi Arabia is not against Abraham Accord. They want to join peace because they want to build peace. But building peace in these conditions actually seems, till now, it's a little bit complicated. Why? Because Saudi Arabia, they clearly said that in order to join Abraham Accord, there is precondition, which is the creation of viable Palestinian state living side by side with the Israeli. But till now, I don't think this condition is met. Why? Because if we observe the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said clearly, who objected clearly the creation of Palestinian state, that gives us the impression that this condition, which is requested by Saudi Arabia to create the Palestinian state, is not met till now. That gives us the impression that this is not the correct time to join maybe by Saudi the Abraham Accord, while they are not against Abraham Accord. They want peace. They want to build peace. But since we are talking about Middle East, and we should not forget the efforts made by Saudi Arabia at that important conference. As a result of that conference, if you remember, there is many international leaders and countries such as big power, such as France and UK. Those countries are permanent members of Security Council, and they decided to move forward and to recognize the Palestinian state, and and also other countries they decided to join. So, in my view, I think the outcomes of that conference will be taken into consideration. The outcomes of the conference held at the United Nations with the support of Saudi will be one of the conditions in order to join Abraham Accord.
And how much do you think this position of Saudi Arabia on a future Palestinian state, very clear position they have, how much do you think that's shaped US policy now towards finding a durable solution?
You know that Americans, they know clearly that the Saudi Arabia plays very important role in the region, and if Saudi Arabia decided to join Abraham Accord, all the other countries seems will join the accord. So no doubt that the relation between the two leaders will solve this issue. I don't know exactly the time. This is impossible to mention right now, but I know that Saudi Arabia and especially American president knows exactly that the influence of Saudi Arabia in the Middle East in order to shape the relation, in order to shape the region in general, plays very important role. So I think that American they relies on Saudi to join the Abraham Accord, but at the same time they know exactly their position. They know exactly that there is a precondition that should be met, which is the creation of Palestinian state, viable, living side by side with the Israeli, in order to build comprehensive and lasting peace in the Middle East.
And just lastly, clearly some big deals are expected during the course of this visit. We've touched on a couple of them, obviously energy, tech, AI, defense. What are the big deals you're going to be looking out for?
Right, exactly. This is one of the topics that will be discussed by the two leaders, economy and energy and even investment. You know that Saudi Arabia, there is a clear vision for the Saudi Arabia, which is 2030. This vision 2030 which is the idea of this vision is to reduce dependence on oil and diversify the economy. So for that reason, Saudi Arabia will invest heavily in this summit in order to bring the most important high-tech technology and in order to diversify economy based on this Vision 2030. So if we follow the news, the second day of the summit, there is another important forum will be held between the Saudi and American. This forum actually organized by Ministry of Investment and in collaboration with Saudi American Council. This forum will be a very important place in order to sign agreements with the American companies that will join the ambition of Saudi Arabia in order to diversify their economy, in order to attract the most important companies in terms of AI, in terms of security, in terms of economy, and even energy. And since we are talking about energy, we should not forget that Saudi Arabia now, and since they want to diversify their economy, they are very interesting to have peaceful nuclear program. This program will help Saudi to diversify their economy and to take advantage from nuclear power. You know that Saudi Arabia is part of NPT, which is Non-Proliferation Treaty, which underscores every single state to use nuclear power for a peaceful purposes. And I think this subject will be examined by the two leaders.
Okay, so clearly lots of things under discussion there.
That's right.
The two leaders. We're going to have to leave it there, we're out of time, but really appreciate you coming to see us. Dr. Amar Fakhri, Professor of International Law at the American University in the Emirates. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for you, sir.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Dr. Aziz Al-Ghashian, who is a lecturer of international relations at Naif Arab University. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on the programme. This is clearly a full red carpet welcome sort of a visit. There's a flyby, there's going to be cannon fire, a gala dinner. What does that tell us, do you think, about the state of relations between Riyadh and Washington?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for having me. It's a great honor to join you again. I think it really speaks to two things. I think it speaks to the strategic depth that both Saudi Arabia and the United States have with each other. I think they realized, notwithstanding the multipolarization of the world that's happening, and even at sometimes the doubt that people may have regarding, I think, the commitments that the United States have, or the United States has, it speaks, I think, to the fact that at the end of the day, both see each other as strategic partners. Now, in this case, there may be a question of elevating this relationship really from a strategic partnership to a strategic alliance. And I think, in my opinion, the pomp and the ceremony is probably something that is reciprocated time and again. I think both characters are, both are huge characters, and both, therefore I think this is something they both see that is very befitting to each other and befitting to the moment in Saudi American relations. I think it's an interesting milestone that they've both reached.
Yeah, and this is really the follow-up, isn't it, to the meeting that happened in May. And in fact, you and I discussed the visit to Riyadh of President Trump. Now, during this visit by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, there are expected to be a series of agreements. And President Trump has already teased the F-35 stealth fighter jets. What are you going to be looking out for?
Well, I think, firstly, I just maybe a few words on why I think it's on how quick this follow-up is. In my opinion, I think for the Saudi ruling elite, they realized that it's best to follow up on some of these deals, on the momentum that was built on the previous meeting in Riyadh as quick as possible, because they want to make sure to get a lot of the deals as they can, or as many deals as they can, over the line. And because they also sense that there's opportunities that they have with Trump that they probably won't have with others, which is basically, and this now leads directly to your question, which is basically, I'm really looking at the nexus of business and tech. For me, I think this is something that I think MBS finds incredibly strategic for them, especially obtaining chips that probably was a bit more difficult to obtain in the previous administration, or maybe in a subsequent administration. The other thing I'm really looking at is what kind of defense relationship are we going to see? Are we going to see an alliance? Are we going to see a consolidation of military relations or not? So I think, Donald Trump mentioned that the F-35s will be sold. It's going to depend what kind of F-35s and what are the prerequisites and the conditions. But the fact that I think he said it will be sold suggests there's momentum. And I think it's too costly to with kind of back down from it. The other thing also is, I think, nuclear energy. And in my opinion, I think that's probably the most sensitive aspect out of all of these things. This is something that I anticipate will reach a particular development in the relationship, or let me say it this way: it will probably shorten the gap, this visit, but I don't think it will reach what Saudis really want, because what the Saudis really want is more flexibility when it comes to enriching uranium and also exporting uranium. So this is something I think that, this meeting, this summit, in my opinion, could be a milestone, a facilitatory step, rather than a culmination of Saudi-American relations. So I think, for me, that's the thing that I'm really looking at most.
Sure. So, I mean, clearly both sides stand to gain. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. I want to ask you about something that's happened since we last spoke, which was the Israeli airstrike on Qatar. And I'm wondering how you think that has shifted the perception of security on the Arabian Peninsula, notably in the minds of people in Riyadh.
Yeah. Well, I have to say there were two things that shifted the notions of security since we last spoke in May. Firstly, the Iran-Israel war. The Iran-Israel war has illustrated the fact that, listen, we've seen the dangers of both states, both Iran and Israel, and what they could do. Not only that, what makes it even far more dangerous, I think, for the GCC and Saudi Arabia in particular also, is the fact that we are basically on the front lines of two other people's wars. And this really makes the situation even more, the security landscape for Saudi to be even more complicated, not even dangerous, but even very, very complicated. So that's one thing. And that really has changed the security perception. But I think your point is right when it comes to the attack on Doha, the Israeli attack on Doha. That has significantly changed the security perception regarding Israel. It is now clear for many people in the region and in Saudi Arabia, and let me just say this, for the youth as well, for Saudi youth, and I'll come to why that is important, for the Saudi youth to say that, listen, the new security threat now is Israel. And look at how astonishing that change was. Once it was a potential ally, now it's all of a sudden the security threat. And I think really Israel really takes, the Netanyahu regime is the one that really takes, is at fault for this, because not only did they say or do these attacks and conduct these attacks on Doha, but they also put a warning out and said, listen, this is to everybody. This is a message to everyone in the region. And so I think this speaks to how far there is of an understanding between Saudi Arabia and Israel when it comes to matters of security. Because a lot of the times people say, well, they're actually joined in the hip. And that's complete nonsense. There's a great deal of insecurity in between that relationship, in between Israel and the region. So the security threat in the region, the security perception has significantly changed. And this is something that makes the notion of normalization even more unlikely.
Right, because, Saudi Arabia has been pretty clear that, normalization is not going to happen yet. And I'm wondering why you think not yet.
Well, for, I think, three reasons. In my opinion, firstly, I would say the domestic public opinion in Saudi. It's domestic public opinion in Saudi, and especially when it comes to the youth, is very, very much hostile towards any notion of normalization. In my opinion, the fact that normalization is treated, quite frankly, as a derogatory term. The term mutabbi' or tatbi' is used as a curse. It's derogatory. That's how bad the situation has become. Moreover, I think the Israeli government has gone time and again to make it very clear that they will not concede anything towards a Palestinian state. And this is to do with their own domestic politics and their own silly season and their own rhetoric towards their own bases. But also on the United States front, in order for Saudi Arabia, based on what the logic of normalization would be when it comes to Saudi Arabia and Israel, Saudi Arabia requires things from the United States, and that requires a treaty. And that treaty requires 67 votes in the Senate. And this means that there has to be a more amicable political landscape in the United States. And that is just not there whatsoever. It's very, very difficult. And next year, we're going to go into midterms, which means that the Democrats will be most likely in control of the Senate. And so I think the whole political dynamics is just very difficult. The last point is the following. I think the fact that Israel has been going on striking at will what it wanted suggests that if there is any discussions of normalization, it's bullied into normalization. It's from a point of vulnerability rather than a point of weakness, and that's something that no one could afford to even talk about. So just the environment is not there, and I will just say this way: for normalization to happen, loads of stars need to be aligned, and now some of these stars are not even in the same galaxy. So it's just very difficult to see normalization happening in the near future.
Just changing the subject slightly and moving away from, the issue of normalization of ties with Israel. I was just reading one Saudi commentator. I don't know if you're aware of his work, Abdulrahman al-Rashid. He writes in the Saudi daily, Al-Sharq al-Awasat. He said, quote, "It's not an exaggeration to say that the success of Saudi-American relations will have a big impact on the region's stability and prosperity." Do you agree with that? And why do you think this relationship is so pivotal to the whole region's prosperity?
Well, I think it comes to the notion of Saudi Arabia's size, its sheer size. And, other countries have visions, and other countries have also projects, and they're no less important. But, Saudi Arabia is the biggest country in the region. And as a result, its survivability and its prosperity has more resonance and has more reverberations than probably other countries would. As a Saudi, I don't like to enter into this whole size game because, countries, it's not about the size. It's about, the will, and it's about kind of, more than that. It's about, efficiency, etc. But what I will say is that in this case, size does matter. And so when a country like the United States is investing in Saudi Arabia, and when you have the international superpower, albeit competing superpower, with a regional superpower, this is now important for, I think, the security of the region, because I think the security of the region now is more interconnected to international security. And so it really is a web of an interconnectivity of real security, international security, and a convergence of international security and regional security with also national security. So it really is, a lot has to do with the size, a lot has to do with really the region and the role and the function that it's playing in an ever multipolarizing world, and in a multipolarizing region that many poles around the world are competing towards or competing in, and also competing with. And so stability is of the essence. And the last point I would say about this is we're beginning to see prosperity and security become very overlapped. This is something that hasn't been there in the region before. At times, I think the security rhetoric and the economic rhetoric were probably, you could see daylight between them. Now, I think it's just inextricably tied. And therefore, prosperity must have security, and vice versa.
Yeah, and just while we're talking about prosperity and the Saudi economy, it's changed immeasurably as an economy over the last decade. I'd just like to ask you, as a Saudi, why is this change necessary, and what's the most significant change, economically speaking, that you've witnessed during the course of the last decade?
Well, for me, I mean, in the last decade, half of that decade, I was abroad. I was living in the UK, and even probably a decade before that even. But, so I spent a great deal of time outside Saudi. And every time I visited, every few months, you could see a change happening. And it's very interesting to see, because there was an uptick in this change. Now, I think you could see the change even when you're in Saudi. For me, I think just the exposure and the fact that I think many people that visit Saudi, even people that I never thought would visit Saudi, are visiting Saudi. And this is due to the openness, I think, of Saudi. This is due to a lot of the festivals and a lot of the things that probably the previous generation in Saudi probably did not pay too much attention to, or maybe undermined the impact of that. But these are machines, vehicles of trying to make sure Saudi Arabia is opening up, and actually, bringing in a great deal of people from abroad to Saudi Arabia. So I think for me personally, the exposure that Saudi Arabia has, and the fact that the tourism that I see, for me is very interesting, and the ease of which people could go into Saudi now. Time and again, people are saying, I'd love to go to Saudi. And before I'd say, yeah, you could come to Saudi. And I was like, in my mind, I'm saying, good luck. Try to find the paperwork that you need. Now, this is less of an obstacle. And so personally, amongst other things, this is the thing that stood out the most.
Right, and what you're saying makes me think about the talks in Washington. We've got that forum, that US-Saudi business forum tomorrow. I mean, this diversification of the Saudi economy surely means great opportunities for US investors.
Absolutely. And not only this, in my opinion, I think it's one thing to have, investors say Saudi is open for business. It's another thing, in my opinion, that American investors say it is open for business. And that's just the reality, and that's clear. And this is something that I, recently wrote about, and said this, how Saudi views the United States. And I think the way I put it was, it viewed it in an asymmetric multipolar world. And what I meant by that was that, yes, there are options out there, but it still seems to view the United States as its main preference. And so, the United States is the biggest economy still. As the saying goes, if they sneeze, everybody else catches a cold. And I think, notwithstanding the fact that there are options and the landscape is changing and there are, diversification, there seems to be something far more prominent when it's investment from the United States. And I think this is something that not only is it just because of the tech and know-how, but this is a result also of a great deal of investment in soft power in the decades prior. So we're seeing a continuation of how previous policies of scholarships, of cooperation, of students mostly going to the United States, coming back to Saudi Arabia, and bringing with them kind of a different worldview. And I have to say, as someone who was, brought up here, in the late 90s and early 2000s, I could see how a great deal of Saudi society has evolved in their worldview. They've become more worldly. Okay, there's still many aspects and pockets of conservatism here and there. This also has to be part of the story. But there is a contingency that is different. And I think that makes the economic cooperation, the tech cooperation, more, I think it makes it easier to gel more.
Sure, and yeah, and that tech really ties in as well with the fact we're talking here, aren't we, about a very young population. I haven't got the figure in front of me. I think it's 70%, that's right, 70% of the Saudi population under the age of 35. And there it is with a leader who's in Washington who is only just 40. I'm talking, of course, about Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So that's all very coherent. I just want to ask you lastly, I mean, obviously, we're talking today about Saudi-US relations, but there are other powers out there. There are other superpowers out there, China, Russia. Can Saudi have three friends in the form of the United States, Russia, China, or does it have to choose?
It's a very important question, and it's a question that is always asked, and it's been being asked for decades. Saudi certainly doesn't have to choose, but Saudi probably previously needed to choose. And that was just not because of Saudi. I think that was just the result of the international landscape. Now things have changed, and the international landscape has changed. And I think this is not only the opportunity, but for me, I think it's also the challenge that Saudi has now. The challenge to really begin to manage this diversification. And I think so far they are doing this. They are managing this, but I think there is room to improve, quite frankly. I think there's aspects of trying to manage this diversification. And one of them, for me, in my opinion, is obtaining an alliance in the United States. Why? Because I think seeking an alliance in the United States speaks to some of the anxieties that people have inside Washington, D.C. by saying, listen, you may be going abroad or you may be going out elsewhere. And in fact, I think the timing is very interesting because the Saudi Arabia the Saudi ruling elite choosing to seek an alliance when there is universal doubt of American reliability says, listen, we're still choosing you. And we're still trying to, you are our preference. We still want to work with you first. But first doesn't mean only. And I think there are also structural issues in the United States that lead to delays, for example, military procurement. And so right now, if there is military delays or military procurement delays or whatever kind of delays or bureaucracy or complications inside Washington, D.C. for anything, Saudis already have a great deal of options. So for Saudi, I think they've positioned themselves in a win-win situation. And this is part of the whole balancing act that they need to do it. In my opinion, I think they just need to, we all need to be more, I think, proactive on the discursive aspect by saying, that it is a win-win situation. And we all, our lens is a win-win situation and not really a zero-sum situation.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there because we're out of time, but really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Always a pleasure. Dr. Aziz Al-Ghashian, a lecturer of international relations at Naif Arab University. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
My pleasure. Good to join you.
We're joined now by Mick Mulroy, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mick. Always a pleasure having you on the programme. We're talking obviously today about Saudi-US relations in light of the visit to Washington by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The ties go back about a century, and I just wanted to start by asking you how important you think Washington views this relationship with Saudi Arabia as being.
Good to be with you again, Tom. Very important. This has a potential to be a very consequential meeting today on a variety of topics, both for the interests of Saudi Arabia, the interests of the United States, the interests of the region, of course, being the Middle East, and for the relationship going ahead with both countries. There's going to be topics on economics, diplomacy, and, of course, security is what we expect today.
Okay, we're expecting some big deals as well. We'll come on to those. Let's start by looking through the US lens. What do you think Washington wants to obtain from this visit?
Well, it's clear the White House has put a lot of effort into their 20-point plan for Gaza. That requires the contributions of many countries, both for this international stabilization force that was essentially approved yesterday in the United Nations, but also the reconstruction, which will require a substantial amount of funds to do so. And that is likely going to really rely heavily on Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries. So I think for the president's plan to get a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and to move ahead with stabilizing the region, Saudi Arabia is a big player with that. Also, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, which the president has put a lot of stock in. Saudi Arabia would not only be a very consequential new join, but they would likely open the way for many other countries to join as well.
Do you think that's likely to happen anytime soon?
I don't think it's likely to happen today. I think the discussions, of course, are going to be continued. They've already started. Saudi Arabia is likely to ask for things like a clear path and a clear commitment to a Palestinian state before they would agree to normalize relationships with Israel. I think they'll also be talking about really asking the U.S. to do more to end the conflict in Sudan, which has caused the most significant humanitarian crisis in the world right now. So there's going to be several asks, I think, from Saudi Arabia to the United States if they're going to normalize relationship with Israel. But that's likely what's going to be discussed today, because there's a lot of benefits the U.S. could provide to Saudi Arabia as well.
Right, and they've had a joint diplomatic win, Saudi Arabia and the United States, during these last few months in the form of Syria. And only last week, the relatively new president of Syria was in Washington and was playing basketball with US officials, and we were talking about that on this channel. Why do you think Saudi Arabia and the United States were so keen to get that relationship right with the new leadership in Syria?
Well, Tom, I mean, obviously, Syria saw an extensive, long, very bloody and destructive civil war. The new president, although he's an interim president, is saying all the right things when it comes to essentially focusing inward on the development of his own country and the prosperity of his own people, all people in Syria, and less on, obviously allowing Iran and Russia to have a platform in Syria like the Assad regime. There's a lot of benefits for the United States to make sure that the interim government succeeds in Syria, but also for the region. Israel, of course, would not have to be so concerned about what is Iran doing in Syria if they were excluded from Syria. And Saudi would like to see that as well. They, I think, pushed President Trump to meet with al-Shura in the White House, and that happened. And I think they will be very much supporters of the further development of Syria, which could be very important, not just for security, but there's things such as the pipeline that could come out of the Middle East and go to Europe, would have to go through Syria, a gas pipeline that would help Europe come off of Russian energy, for example, huge economic benefits to the region to include Syria. There's a lot to discuss between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia on the future of Syria that's really would benefit not only the people of Syria, but the region's stability.
Yeah, another thing that might have changed perceptions about the region's stability was the Israeli strike on Qatar in September of this year. I'm wondering how much of a game changer you think that was to perceptions on the Arabian Peninsula about security.
I think that was a very significant event for not only the views in the region toward Israel's willingness to strike. In that case, it was the negotiation team for Hamas, which was there at the request of those pushing for a ceasefire, to include the United States. In fact, it was the U.S. proposal that was being considered by Hamas when they were targeted. And I think it really sent a shockwave not only to the leadership in Qatar, of course, but around the region, and likely led to this above major non-NATO allied status defense cooperation agreement between the United States and Qatar that is very unique, not just in the region, but around the world, without an actual treaty. And I think that that sparked an interest in Saudi Arabia to get something similar. And by all reports, they're going to ask the United States for something similar to this language, which is very similar to the language of Article 5 in the NATO treaty, to be given to them as well. And that might be a big, big carrot for Saudi Arabia to do things like actively consider joining the Abraham Accords in support for reconstruction in Gaza.
And actually, Mick, just looking back on what's happened the last couple of months, it wasn't long after the Israeli strike on Doha that Saudi Arabia signed a defense deal with Pakistan. And I was wondering how you think that was interpreted by Washington. Do you think Saudi Arabia was perhaps sending out a message?
Quite possible. There's been a lot of concern by our partners and allies about the way the U.S. now views even historical treaties like NATO and like the treaties we have in the far Indo-Pacific. And I think they looked to Pakistan, obviously a nuclear-capable, nuclear country, as a clear defense mechanism for themselves. That might have sent a message to Washington. Certainly the message that Qatar said clearly is we're going to need some serious guarantees if we're going to continue hosting your largest U.S. airbase in the Middle East in Al Udeid. And we're going to be targeted not only by Israel, but by Iran. If you remember, that was the case as well. And I think Saudi Arabia wants to see the same level of commitment. And based on all the requests that the United States and, of course, the historical ties between the U.S. and Saudi, it's likely to happen. But that, of course, is going to cause a domino effect. And other good partners in the region are going to look for that as well.
Okay, and just lastly, there is a 1,000-strong Saudi delegation now in Washington. And there is, of course, this summit tomorrow, this business forum, the US-Saudi Business Forum. What sort of deals, I mean, in what sorts of sectors will you be looking out for most, Mick?
I think it's going to be across the spectrum, really. Certainly in the high tech and the AI industry, there's a lot of discussion on that. That, of course, plays across all levels of economics and security. There'll be a discussion, of course, on the desire of Saudi Arabia to purchase, I think it's 48 F-35s. That will be the first non-Israeli country in the Middle East to get that, of course. There'll be a lot of discussion on from the defense industry on what else Saudi would be interested in purchasing. It's really going to be a substantial event. And I imagine people from across the spectrum of business are going to be there and trying to, again, further the economic ties between the kingdom and the United States.
And what about those F-35 fighter jets that President Trump said will be sold now to Saudi Arabia? How significant would that be?
So I think it will be a very significant decision. He said yesterday in questions in the Oval Office, unrelated to this event, but after another event, that he had decided to sell these F-35s to Saudi Arabia. So if that's the case, there is something called essentially requiring the United States to ensure the qualitative military edge of Israel in any decisions when it comes to defense assistance overseas. So this has to be viewed in that light. It's a self-imposed law, of course, on the United States. But I think they've already made that determination if the president's announcing that the sale is going to happen. So it will be controversial to some in the Senate, and there's certain ways they can put holds on it. But right now, at least from the executive branch of the United States, it looks like it's cleared to happen, which will be a significant advantage for Saudi Arabia and largely cause other countries, again, just like the security pact itself, to start asking the United States, why not us, such as the UAE, for example.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Really appreciate you speaking to us. Mick Mulroy, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.
We have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first.
For in-depth analysis and all the latest developments across the globe, make sure you join us every weekday.
President Trump is trying to negotiate a ceasefire.
With so much happening, so much information, and so much noise,
International law will have no part in his administration.
It can be hard to keep track.
Tariffs will just fuel inflation.
We're going to fight these tariffs.
But you can count on us to tell you what you need to know.
We stand by your side.
Join me, Tom Burges Watson, for Global News Today, right here on Al Arabiya News. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Matt Terrell, who is the former Chief of Staff for Marco Rubio. He is now the Managing Partner of Firehouse Strategies. He joins us from Washington. Matt, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for agreeing to speak to us. I mean, a lot of pomp and ceremony, I think it's fair to say, last night with the various events at the White House. Probably you could say that it matched the same pomp and ceremony that Crown Prince Mohammed Salman gave to President Trump during his visit to Saudi Arabia back in May. Do you think that's a fair comparison?
Absolutely, no question about it. The red carpet was rolled out for President Trump when he was overseas doing his visit, and certainly the red carpet was rolled out yesterday during that visit as well by the prince. And look, you know, this just shows the growing partnership, the great partnership that the United States has with Saudi Arabia. And I think what you saw wasn't just policymakers or politicians a part of this, but key members of the business community. You saw celebrities, Tiger Woods, for example, at the dinner last night. So this just shows the partnership that the United States has with Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it just wasn't about the dinner last night. It's also about deal making here. Certainly deals are being made, whether it's on AI and technology or the sale of F-35 fighter jets. That certainly are all things that were important, certainly to Saudi Arabia, I think, and also certain things, of course, being tackled here that are important in the United States as well.
I'm going to ask you a bit more about that dinner last night and who was there, if we have time, a bit later in the interview. But I really want to pick up on a couple of those points you just made there about the AI agreements, the F-35s. I mean, these are pieces of military hardware and tech that the United States doesn't just sell to anyone, does it?
They don't. In fact, there are countries who have wanted this hardware. The UAE, for example, I believe has wanted this hardware. You know, look, Israel has this hardware, and obviously that's a dynamic here. But I think what it shows is that President Trump, the United States, has great trust in Saudi Arabia, great respect for Saudi Arabia. And, you know, this is just building on that partnership. You know, I don't believe this sale would take place unless there's that trust with Saudi Arabia that the United States now has and has had for a number of years, of course. So, look, this is obviously valuable sale to Saudi Arabia, but it's also a commitment by the United States when it comes to defense purposes. You also saw President Trump talk about, you know, the importance of having kind of this NATO-like relationship, if you will, with Saudi Arabia. So, look, this is something that was important, I think, to Saudi Arabia for quite some time. Now this sale is going to take place of these F-35s. It's obviously a big deal. It's kind of the crown jewel, if you will, fighter jet that's out there. Many countries want it.
Indeed. Then, of course, there was the promise that Saudi Arabia is going to invest as much as $1 trillion in the United States. That's up sharply on a previous pledge of $600 billion US dollars. Do you think the fact that it went from 600 billion to $1 trillion took a lot of people by surprise, though?
Yeah, look, with President Trump, often you see these numbers go up when he's negotiating with countries and with companies. But look, I think it's just showing that this is a serious next step, if you will, that both Saudi Arabia and the United States wants to take. You know, I think Saudi Arabia recognizes that, you know, they've been seeing President Trump talk about that golden era or that golden age, if you will, that President Trump wants to lead the United States towards. But Saudi Arabia wants to lead towards their own golden age. And the best way for them to do that is to continue to have a greater partnership between Saudi Arabia and the United States. And part of that is investment. And so I think, you know, this investment is going to be good for Saudi Arabia, but it's also a good investment for the United States. You're going to see this investment trickle into the U.S. economy. In fact, you saw just yesterday someone in the Oval Office who was talking about how this would impact states like South Carolina, you know, through job growth, you know, for example. So, look, this is a real deal for the citizens of the U.S. You know, right now, obviously, affordability, the U.S. economy is top of mind among the American people. And when President Trump is working to tackle those issues, such as affordability, I think part of that isn't just talking about domestic things that he's doing here in the United States, but also these kind of key commitments, such as from Saudi Arabia. Getting this investment into the U.S. economy is obviously vital and something I think will help bolster the U.S. economy in the years to come here.
I mean, clearly, President Trump, who's nearly 80, has a very good rapport with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, who is half President Trump's age. He's just turned 40. President Trump called him, quote, a very good friend of mine, and said he'd done incredible things. I wanted to ask you, Matt, how important you think that rapport between those two men is and has been in helping us get to the point that we're now talking about trillion-dollar deals.
Yeah, I think it's vital. Look, when you look at deals, whether it's in the private sector or a leader making deals with countries, it comes down to having good relationships. You know, being able to negotiate, cut deals, you got to have a good relationship and the ability to have trust. And I think these two leaders have that in one another. But also, I think it's important to note that it's not just on these deals, but go back and take a look, for example, when the U.S. was involved with the war with Iran, you know, between Israel and Iran. You saw Saudi Arabia really step up there, during that bombing, if you will, that campaign by the U.S. You saw Saudi Arabia step up to the plate and really help and support the U.S. during that campaign. I think that just goes to show they are a true ally. They've become I think, greater ally for the U.S. And I think that's something President Trump has worked on over a series of years. It hasn't just been his second term here that this is all, sort of kind of happened in terms of this relationship. You got to go back and take a look at his first term when he was doing this, not just with Saudi Arabia, but other leaders, if you will, in the Middle East. Obviously, the Abraham Accords were a big, big win for President Trump and his administration, and I think for the world, frankly, in his first term. We'll see what happens next with Saudi Arabia with respect to the Abraham Accords. But I think this was really a very effective trip here that we saw here to Washington, and really something that I think goes to show that there's just greater abilities here for both of these nations to enter that next golden age that I think both these leaders want both their countries to enter into.
Yeah, so something we're hearing from you, and we've heard from other guests as well, this sense that security ties between Saudi Arabia and the United States are stronger than ever. Economic and business ties are stronger than ever. And that's probably why some 400 CEOs from Saudi and US companies have gathered for this US-Saudi investment forum. What's your understanding of what that forum's all about, Matt?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of investment taking place here, and that's going to be huge for the private sector, right? I mean, you take a look at some of the key investments being made. It's not just with defense and aircraft and military hardware, but we've talked about, the fact that this AI investment, so I think you're going to see, for example, just here in the United States, many of the leaders of the big tech companies here in the United States really working hand in hand with Saudi Arabia leadership. So look, part of this is just, these are business deals and these are investments that are going to be integrated through private sector companies here in the U.S. And so, look, this is not just about, defense. It's not just about the Abraham Accords. This isn't just about, trying to, drive peace in the Middle East, which I think Saudi Arabia will be critical towards. This is also about, private sector deals being made here. They're going to have a huge impact, I think, not just on Saudi Arabia, but also on, frankly, the United States. I go back to, job growth, job creation is vital right now here in the U.S. You're seeing Americans really talk about affordability, job creation, these kind of investments you have from countries, whether it was the trade deal with Japan that President Trump made, or this deal that's being made with Saudi Arabia, building on that $600 billion investment to get to $1 trillion. That's greater investment into the private sector, into the United States. And so these CEOs are going to want to be at the table to help drive that investment, to help utilize that investment as they're making key opportunities here in the U.S. as well. You talk about onshoring of jobs. It's not the public sector that does that. It's the private sector. That's why you need these CEOs at the table here to help drive this.
Right, and I said I would ask you, if we had time, and we apparently do, to ask you a little bit about the dinner last night, because as you said, Cristiano Ronaldo, the football player who plays for the Saudi club Al Nassr, was amongst the guests there. You mentioned Tiger Woods. Elon Musk was there too. And I'm just wondering whether the fact that Elon Musk was there means that perhaps bridges have been mended, have they, between Elon Musk and President Trump?
I think so. Look, I think they're both individuals who are our leaders at the end of the day. And look, you saw that not just last night with Elon Musk being there. He was, Elon Musk was at the Charlie Kirk Memorial service just a few weeks ago and had a moment with President Trump there as well. So, look, I think that relationship, I think has been repaired. I mean, look, is it going to be, candidly, is it probably going to be the same of what it was? Probably not, right? I think President Trump is somebody who certainly forgives but doesn't forget. And obviously there was some turbulence there in that relationship. But at the end of the day, Elon Musk is an incredible individual in the sense of being an innovator, of being a business leader. Obviously, I think President Trump really appreciated what Elon Musk did through the Doge campaign, if you will, and the work that Elon Musk has done in that effort. So, look, I think both these men respect each other. And really, at the end of the day, President Trump is surrounding himself with people that he respects, trusts, and knows. And I think he has that in Elon Musk. And obviously, there were other people, to your point, there last night as well. You're seeing many business titans, CEOs, celebrities, people like Tiger Woods, as I mentioned, there as well. So, really, this was almost like a state dinner, right? I mean, it technically wasn't, but it had the effect of it and had the feel of it. That just goes to show, again, the respect, the trust that President Trump has in Saudi Arabia, and the appreciation I think he has for this great partnership that they're only going to build on. I think, frankly, it's going to be exciting to see what happens next year.
Yeah, indeed. And President Trump did say that his son, Barron, is a big fan of Cristiano Ronaldo. Not something I knew. But just going back to the matter in hand, just to wrap up this conversation, Matt, I mean, we're talking here about a pretty much century-old bond between Saudi Arabia and the United States. And as you've been saying, the red carpet has been very much rolled out for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, all the trappings of a state visit. What would be your greatest takeaways from this visit so far? And then as an extension of that question, what's been the photo moment, would you say, of this trip?
Well, I think the photo moment was when they were standing outside the White House yesterday, and you had those F-35s fly over. And it's not uncommon for President Trump to do a flyover when you have world leaders visiting the White House. But, I think it was showing, to the world, frankly, what the possibilities are if you partner with the United States, if you build greater friendship with the United States. And I think you're seeing that on full display here. And I think the bigger takeaways, though, out of this are going to be what happens next, right? Talk is talk, but action really matters. But I think what you're seeing is this action's already underway. And I think really it's just not going to be on the investments that we're talking about, but certainly what happens next with the Abraham Accords. I actually think that Saudi Arabia over the next year will join the Abraham Accords. I believe that's going to take place. I think you will see that happen. Obviously, they talked about some of the dynamics that Saudi Arabia wants to see take shape in order to do that. But I am confident that they will join the Abraham Accords. So that's one of the big things to watch. That is, frankly, one of President Trump's legacy projects, if you will. And frankly, the bigger elements at play here are the Middle East itself. President Trump, has been working to end wars. One of those, of course, was this horrific war in the Middle East that has now come to an end. But what are the next steps on ensuring sustained peace in the Middle East, sustained momentum to ensuring that new wars don't break out? And I think it's just this new opportunity in the Middle East. But I think what President Trump recognizes is that he can't be the only leader to try and bring greater peace to the Middle East. He's got to have great partnerships there in the region to do that. And I believe that he believes that Saudi Arabia can be that great leader to help spread that peace and economic opportunity through the Middle East, which really could be that next golden age that I think we all around the world want to see happen, and not just in terms of peace, but economic opportunity for those who really need it the most right now.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. A pleasure talking to you. Matt Terrell, former Chief of Staff for Marco Rubio, Managing Partner of Firehouse Strategies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Greg Swenson, a friend of the show and chair of Republicans Overseas. He joins us now from Chicago. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us, Greg. I mean, what's really striking talking to our guests today is the sense of the strength of economic ties and security ties. Fair to say those two aspects of the relationship have really never been stronger between Washington and Riyadh.
Yeah, Tom, it's a good point. I mean, we've always had a really productive relationship. They've always been an ally of the U.S. If you go back to George H.W. Bush, who basically invaded Iraq in Desert Storm to defend the Saudis. but it's been really since the war a really tight relationship between the two. But you're right, President Trump has definitely elevated it. The only time we had difficult relations with the Saudis was during the first few years of the Biden administration. When President Biden, was always finding a way to insult or offend our allies, whether it was Israel or Saudis or the UK. So it's nice to see the president back in office and really elevating that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Riyadh views the United States as a primary strategic partner. And I'm just wondering whether that level of trust is reciprocated. I mean, assuming it is, because look at some of those deals that relate to very sensitive things, whether it's nuclear power, whether it's AI chips, or whether it's extremely sophisticated military hardware.
Yeah. The F-35s, you mentioned military hardware. There's a lot of security relationship there. And I think it's important for the U.S. to have another ally in the region, another strong ally, much like the UAE and Israel, but also to have, the investment into the U.S. That's really critical. And of course, there's always been a dependency or even codependency on the energy that comes from Saudi. And, it's even though the U.S. is now the world's largest energy producer, it's still really important to have the Saudis on our team there and keeping production up and keeping prices down. So and you saw that again when Biden, was very hostile to MBS and very hostile to the energy sector in the U.S. And when prices really increased dramatically, he went begging to Riyadh and begged MBS to pump more oil. Of course, he declined. So I think we've seen how the relationship can be a really important economic factor with oil prices.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we crossed to you about how originally it was reported that Saudi Arabia would invest as much as $600 billion in the United States. But while sitting in the Oval Office next to President Trump, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said that actually the investment could be as much as $1 trillion. Yeah. President Trump looked pretty surprised. Were you?
Not really. I think the president has a way with people. He's able to get commitments for huge sums. I'm not 100% sure that he will actually meet that target, but just to make that commitment is pretty incredible. So you're seeing just a massive surge in foreign direct investment into the U.S. I mean, it's always been a destination for the Gulf states, but even more so now. And I think that's another reason why we'll see a really robust economy next year.
Talk us a bit about the Defense Cooperation Pact and the fact that Saudi Arabia has been designated now as a major non-NATO ally. What's the significance of that?
I think it's tremendous, Tom. I mean, again, as I mentioned, it's important to have another ally in the region. You basically have just about all the powerful nations now against Iran. And that's important for U.S. security and for security in the region. But also behind every security move now, you have to think about China. And it was really important for this president not to have the countries in the Gulf align with China. You can trade with China, but you just don't want to be their ally. And so in many respects, this commitment really solidifies the relationship that the Saudis have, not only with the U.S., but with the West in general. And then again, keeping a lid on the expansion of Chinese military assets.
And the fact that F-35 fighter jets are going to be sold to Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are cutting edge warplanes. They're really special pieces of weaponry. And again, the United States doesn't sell that kind of hardware to just anyone, does it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're careful about that, but we do sell them obviously to our NATO allies, and you'll see more of that with the increase in defense spending. This is a really important moment in NATO, basically. NATO's, got a commitment now. All the countries are committing to 5% of GDP. So you'll see a lot more F-35s and other technology being moved around the world. But again, it's really important to have another ally in the region besides Israel. And so I think the president is all for it and wants to make sure that that the Saudis are well armed because they are now a significant ally. The other thing to keep in mind is they'll have to do a lot of training. There'll be a lot more interaction between the militaries. I would imagine, the F-35 is an Air Force plane, so fighter. So you'll see a lot of cross-border training and interaction between the U.S. Air Force and the Saudi Air Force. So, this is a good moment. But again, I think you always have to keep China in mind.
Now, the green light's been given for advanced artificial intelligence chips to be provided to Saudi Arabia. Why is this such a sensitive issue in the United States?
In terms of the chips, Tom?
In terms of the chips, why is it such a delicate issue, and why would the United States be so cautious about signing off on this?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And it's ultimately, again, it brings China into the conversation. Our biggest concern is that these extra sensitive chips end up in the Chinese military, in the PLA. And I think that's really a caution or a concern for the U.S. military. And so I think it's demonstrating some real trust of the Saudis that we're going to have our sensitive chips being shipped there. So I think that's another step in this tightening of the relationship. And it's important, again, to look after our allies, whether it's with chips and technology or with military equipment. So I think you'll probably see more of that, not less.
Now, we're told that some 400 CEOs of Saudi and U.S. companies gathered today for this U.S.-Saudi investment forum. What's your understanding of what that forum's all about, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, look, the floodgates are open. There's going to be so much cross-border investment, especially incoming foreign direct investment into the U.S. from Saudi. But I think you'll see, it'd be really beneficial for both countries, right? As you mentioned the chips, and I think we're a great supplier to the Saudis in a number of different areas, and so it'll be a two-way street. But I think that $1 trillion number is significant. So a lot of U.S. businesses are going to be looking for capital, and personally, I'm actually pretty active in that arena right now. And so Maria Bartiromo, who's one of the most famous financial reporters or financial journalists, is moderating the conference today. And I think you'll see a lot of handshakes or maybe even a lot of contracts come out of it.
Interesting to see who was at the dinner last night in Washington. Cristiano Ronaldo, who of course plays for a Saudi football team, was there. Tiger Woods, I'm told, was there. Elon Musk was there. Were you surprised to see him on the guest list?
Not really. I think they kind of kissed and made up over the last few months. I think there was a lot of drama. I of course had a lot of inquiry. I seem to only get phone calls from certain media, not Al Arabiya, of course, but certain media only calls when there's a fight with Elon Musk or there's something about the Epstein files. So I find it not surprising that he was there because they did have their spat, but the president's had spats with many people and often kisses and makes up.
Okay, and just lastly, I mean, the relationship between President Trump and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. I mean, anyone who watched the Oval Office press conference yesterday will have seen there's a considerable amount of warmth between the two men. They clearly get along well. And I'm just wondering whether you think that is, and their friendship is really a driving force behind deals to the tune of $1 trillion US.
Without a doubt. I mean, the president has reached out to, both of his first international trips in both of his terms were to Saudi. And so I think it's important to highlight that. And yeah, he has a great relationship with MBS. He's got a similar relationship with others in the region, and I think that, he's really popular in the region. I love to see it. And that's why I think there's so much opportunity to do business with the UAE, with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia. I think, there's going to be a lot more, maybe, perhaps kicked off originally by the Abraham Accords, back in his first term. But surely there's been a real elevation again of the relationship. And yeah, that's in great part due to President Trump and his fondness for MBS, but also his fondness for the country and the region.
OK, we're going to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you very much indeed. Greg Swenson,
Great,
Chair of
Tom.
Republicans Overseas. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
We have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first.
For in-depth analysis and all the latest developments across the globe, make sure you join us every weekday.
President Trump is trying to negotiate a ceasefire.
With so much happening, so much information, and so much noise,
International law will have no part in his administration.
it can be hard to keep track.
Tariffs will just fuel inflation.
We're going to fight these tariffs.
But you can count on us to tell you what you need to know.
We stand by your side.
Join me, Tom Burges Watson, for Global News Today, right here on Al Arabiya News.
I wish reality were as easy as talking. He grows up but keeps that innocence. That's the instinct God created us with. Mahmoud's dream is to become a pianist.
Is speech the only way to express thoughts and feelings? Descartes, the father of modern philosophy, said, "I think, therefore I am." He didn't say, "I speak, therefore I am." There are many means of communication around us: drawing, music, singing, writing, sports. Even eyes have a language. Each one of us is different. We share many things and differ in many others. The same applies to autistic people who can be similar or different. Since medicine discovered autism 8 decades ago, half of people around us still see it as a mystery. And such people do not try to know anything about autism. Even scientists disagree over it. Some see it as a psychological or neurological disorder, while others consider it a genetic biological problem. Why don't we know a lot about autism? Today, we try to reach them. We are not looking for a cause, a doctor, or a cure. This will be a special mission in which we go to them to find out their thoughts and feelings. Do they live in the moment only? Or do they dream and wish? Do they understand adolescence? What is lying? Or politeness to them? Do they know they are different? We thought it would be enough to get answers even to some of those questions. It's impossible to reach everyone, but it led us to a few of them. A young man living in his 20s, and in his story, a message for every human.
I exactly experienced the entire 5 stages of Kubler-Ross. I experienced every single stage. Starting with denial, I experienced this stage in the sense that, Dad, I cannot believe that my son has autism. There is nothing wrong with my son. It must be a stage that would pass. You know how mothers might fool themselves. They pretend that there is nothing wrong, then there's the stage of anger. The anger stage involves questions like, why isn't he interacting? Why should Mahmoud be autistic? Even though I never asked myself or God about why I had to go through this.
When I was young, my father used to sing for me in the car. I love you when you speak. I love you when you draw a smile. شو بحبك لما بتحكي ترسم عشفافك ضحكي شو بحبك لما بتبكي بتشكي وعم بتغلغل فيه حبيبي انت الأحلى عمري بقربك عم بيحلى عطرك سحرك صوتك رسمك صار مني وفيك.
Sometimes I thought about committing suicide. I wished death for me and my son, but my death wouldn't change anything. In the end, my son would be left alone, and that's not what I want for him. When I felt that I was fed up, as they say, I could no longer bear this angry and depressed fate. And that's when it started to search for psychological solutions. Thus, I studied psychodrama therapy, because I was convinced that I wouldn't heal. In 1 or 2 sessions, or even in 1 or 2 years, I was convinced I needed to know how to face my feelings and understand my psychological condition throughout my life, because I knew my current situation would continue all the time.
شو حلو حبيبي شو حلو هالقمر شوفوا ما أجمله بس أنا عبالي دلله وحياتي ما حدا بقى يزعله. I don't like hurting anyone.
أوقات الدنيا بتوجعني وساعات بتعاند ويايا لا بخاف وحخاف ازاي يعني دايما مطمن طول ما انت معايا.
During World War II, a psychiatrist was influenced by the power of compassion and resilience in human spirit. In 1969, she introduced a model named after her, about the 5 stages of grief. Through this model, Kubler-Ross wanted to speak out loud about the feelings a person experiences when faced with a shock that shakes their inner peace. The transitional stages in the Kubler-Ross change curve begin with shock, which leads to denial. Then anger takes hold. Then we begin bargaining with ourselves in a one-sided dialogue. We want to escape the crisis without making any effort. Then comes depression and sorrow. Despair and all negative thoughts start to attack at the same time. Acceptance is the beginning of the solution.
And out of love for her son, she feels hatred. She thinks she hates her son, but in fact, that represents in psychology the stage of anger in Kubler-Ross model. She becomes angry with herself because she feels those emotions, which are unfortunately normal. If we had psychological awareness in education, she wouldn't be blaming herself. Once I reached the stage of acceptance, he started to show results that I had been waiting for years of effort. He started to show me those results. I reached a state of acceptance that it's over. I accepted him however he is, whatever progress he makes or doesn't make. That's it. This is my son, and I want to love him just the way he is. And that is the golden key.
I accepted Mahmoud as he is, like any mother who wanted him to lean on her. But what happened was the opposite. Fatin's dreams of Mahmoud graduating from university with a postgraduate degree did not come true. Mahmoud opened a door to his world for her, and he amazed her and made her forget the routine life and the struggle, competition, and racing against time in everything.
I used to be afraid that something might happen to me. And how would Mahmoud eat? He doesn't know how to say, I want to eat. He wouldn't say, I'm thirsty. I have to bring him water. But what worries me is his perseverance. Mahmoud has overcome it, thankfully. Thank God, you could say.
Do you consider that the great achievement was by Mahmoud or Fatin?
It was definitely by Mahmoud. We honor mothers in our society, and we see the efforts made. But, unfortunately, we don't understand the value of that effort because they struggle just like we do. They struggle with themselves. It's not something easy for them from the start. It's not easy for them because we are breaking their nature. In fact, I'll tell you more. We are distorting them. We are distorting their nature so that they become like us.
Due to the commonalities within the stories, we went to Niraj, a young boy who is talented in drawing and video games, a boy no older than 12, who speaks, reads, and writes. He has a small home, with a family, school, and friends.
At this time, I don't know nothing about the autism. So I was just thinking why he don't talk. Why he don't talk? Because he was speaking, he's eating good, sleeping good. I think when I call him, he don't come. I say, Niraj, he don't look at us, don't come. So one day when he was 3 years old, with nothing, no speak, he just making sounds like At this time, I don't know nothing about autism. I know autism only, I know some children with development problem have autism. So when I come back home and I went to the internet, this is something wrong. You never have to go to the internet to check and solve your problem. Oh my God, what only bad things about autism, only. But there I see a picture of my son.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I would say that, I mean, being in denial is kind of running away, isn't it? It's an indirect way of saying you're running away if you are in denial. You know, maybe you're in denial because subconsciously you know it's true, but but maybe you're in denial because maybe you don't know what to do, so you panic. And it's definitely Artemia is what woke me up. Kind of she would bring me back down to earth, saying this is not going to go away. He's not going to snap out of it. It's not something that there's no medicine that we can just give him and he's going to be okay. And then I would see what she's doing. And that's, then that was like kind of the inspiration to, I want to be part of this journey and help where I can. That's basically how I transitioned from not doing anything into trying to do something. I see myself as a father to Niraj, not as an autistic child, but as a normal child, which gives me an over-sensing comfort. So it's not, I should do more with Niraj because he's autistic. It's more, I should just do more with him just because he's just another child. So I think now I'm not beating myself up because he's autistic, and I think that's a testament on how far he's come.
Was 5, we take him to one psychologist, and she told me, "Oh, you have to understand because you will never talk. When he gonna be adult with the mind of the child." He just told me like this. My son is talking now. If you say that for one mother, you take her hope. Yeah, your hope. You need to give hope. You need to say, "Oh, buy this book. Oh, do this, do that. Come back here. Let's do something." They need to be positive.
I've never had pets. I'm not a huge pet lover, but I did try, and whenever we take him to the park, try and push him towards the dogs in the park. And yeah, he liked them a lot. And now we have cats, so he's plays with them as much as he wants. I did try to play football with him. He doesn't want to play. So then I just kind of revert back to what he's interested in, and because at the end of the day, that's how you maximize engagement with anyone.
The doctor tried to steal her hope, but she failed twice. As a doctor, and as a human, that's what happened to Artemia. She lost herself chasing books and sources for guidance to reach her son. Her mission wasn't easy, and notably, the majority of books written about autism were written by autistic people themselves.
One of the therapists told me we have to make some exercise with him. You put some pop with the hot water, no, very hot water. Yeah, one is something like a lemon, or do this exercise as many as you can. Okay, show me phone. Good work. Show me cooking. Good work, Niraj. Show me jumping. Good work. Coloring pencil. Good work, Niraj.
She pulled hope out of pain to get her son to read, write, and draw, and express himself, even participate in competitions with others. They are not in their own world. They are in ours.
How did they help, Niraj?
Oh yeah, definitely. So when we have games that involve, but mainly those kind of group games, is definitely you bring them in, and the kids don't know they're doing it. The kids don't know they're helping. For them, they're just playing.
Was very difficult, was very depressed in the beginning. And now I see my son, he can talk, he can ask what he wants, he have good behavior outside, he learning many things. I like my son like this, I want him like this, I don't want another son. I don't want a perfect Niraj. He's perfect for me.
They don't know they are different. We are the ones who create the difference. Many realize this truth. Nahed, the mother who wants to help them reach their fullest potential, to discover their skills without differences and bullying.
I am Nahed, a mother before anything else. I built this entire place, dreaming of a space where Ahmed could live, where I could watch him grow. My dreams, like any mother, were very big. Unfortunately, after I started this place, Ahmed's needs were different, and today Ahmed. What exists in this place? But the place has become for all the Ahmed in this world. I now have more than one Ahmed. I have Ali, I have Khalil. They call me Mom. And my son does not talk. After my long journey with Ahmed, he stayed the same. I was the one who changed. So I wanted to change Ahmed, but Ahmed won't change. Ahmed granted me exponential strength to be the person I am now, capable of helping all these people. I really do not see myself as strong. Is there a greater strength than that? This is Ahmed's strength, although considered as disabled, but they are not weak. They deserve to live. We all have our own kind of disability. The only thing these children fear is losing their parents. They fear because we have become their safety, not the society. The community as a whole must change so that children feel safe. Then comes competition, and there comes desire to achieve self-worth. Children do not feel safe. Their safety is us. So we must give our children safety before we ask society to give them safety. A group of young men graduated from our center are now working in government agencies, in Emicor, and some working at Siemens Energy, with very good salary, comparable to university graduate salaries. These children must have experience and skills so that they can compete in the labor market according to their capabilities. My name is Andrea, and I'm 18 years old. I consider myself as a kind person. I love helping everyone who seeks help. I enjoy spending time with my family. I believe there is love inside every person. Each person has a beautiful soul within them. How would you describe Mahmoud? He is a kind person and musically talented. He plays the piano and sings, and he is also handsome.
How do you describe Andrea?
She is my friend. I love her very much. She plays the piano and the guitar.
I was studying a major that I love. I was easing my conscience as a mother by studying something that could help my son. We can manage behavior either with reinforcement or punishment. When we know which reinforcement is best for the child, we can use it to teach the child to ask and express themselves. It is not necessary to express by talking, because many autistic do not speak. So we can use pictures, or we can use an iPad, to be able to communicate with them, and they can communicate with us. This skill is one of the most important things we teach a child. It's one of the foundational skills we begin with for a child. Honestly, the early stages were the hardest for me. I used to repeat sessions that he learned with the specialist every day. I would reapply the speech sessions with him 4 times a day. I used to repeat them on the same day. At the times when I could not do these sessions, I would repeat them through activities I would do with him at home. So when he became responsive, when he was ready, when he became ready to expose him, experiments to find out what does he like, so we tried. To experiments and discover what he liked, we began teaching him the field of computer and software. And we tried exposing him to all fields until we discovered that Mahmoud was excellent at playing piano. He can express himself, his anger, his joy through playing the piano.
What if we were asked to pause for a moment and put on the shoes of this mother or sister or that father or brother just for a moment? What if we realized that one of our children is on the autism spectrum? Everyone we spoke to never wished to switch roles. Instead, they asked of those around them or those they encountered on the street or in the store or the cinema or school. Anyway, they wished to grant these passes by the children with autism a little understanding and a little love.
It pains me to see him grow up, still with that same innocence and childlike nature. Maybe because I'm afraid for him, afraid of his innocence, the purity of his thinking, his unconditional love for people, and his lack of awareness of the evil in this world. The initial phase is exceptionally challenging, initiating them with their first word, the first letter. It's a very challenging stage. It's one of the most challenging stages. The challenge of adulthood is also affected.
And I want to say to the ones who abandon their children, go back to them. They need you. Do not be ashamed of your children. Your son may not be what you dreamed of, but they become something you never dreamed of before. I am really grateful for his presence, no matter what he is. Of course, I wish he does not suffer from autism. I cannot imagine my life without his presence.
What do you want to say to Dad?
I played the piano.
If you want to talk to him but he is away,
I call him.
what do you tell him?
Come. I love playing piano and drawing and sports and swimming.
What do you do in the kitchen?
I make a labneh sandwich.
صعبة في أولها مع بعض أنا وأنت أكيد هنكملها لا 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 لا
Welcome to the metropolis. The big city. This is where tech, trends, and culture meet. Meet the people. See the sights. Walk the city streets. And experience the lifestyle. This is your first-class ticket to the cities of the world. Geneva, a true gem of Switzerland, Geneva. Full of history, architecture, and sights, Geneva is a worthy place to visit. The amazing European city is best known for Lake Geneva, of course. The jet d'eau water jet should definitely be on top of your list. The jet of water from the lake can go so high and is considered the emblem of the city of Geneva. Go to the pier, get close to the water jet, and you'll feel the powerful pressure of water projected into the air. Geneva Lake is a central focus of the city. It is surrounded by a panoramic view of the mountains with great promenades too. Throughout the year, many boat trips travel to give tourists a view of the city's lakeside. The buildings and, of course, the jet d'eau water jet are terrific sights to see from afar. Next up is the Old Town. As Switzerland's biggest historical city and the home of the Reformation movement, there is so much to be uncovered here. Every corner of Geneva's cobbled streets, you will find Swiss shops and cafes that are worth dropping by. The town square is an active area and was originally a Roman forum. Not to be missed is the St. Peter's Cathedral. You'll find it at the very heart of Old Town. See its architectural beauty and think of how it took over 400 years to build. Now, the cathedral stands to almost 1,000 years old. St. Peter's Cathedral is also known for the archaeological museum you'll find in its basement and the panoramic views you can catch glimpses of from the North Tower. Want more views from the top? Try Mont Saleve. It's a mountain right outside the city where you'll see Geneva in its entirety. For a dose of the green scene in the city, the Parc des Bastions is where you should be. It's a pretty tree-lined park that dates from way back in the 1700s. It was home to the Reformation Wall, which commemorates the main founders of the Protestant faith, including John Calvin. More history? Head over to the Geneva Museums, the cultural and historical place to be. The Musée des Arts d'Extrême-Orient is home to art from Japan and China, and it is renowned internationally. Other notable stops are the Museum of Natural History, the Barbier-Mueller Museum, and the Museum of Art and History. It's time for us to go. Pack your bags and get your tickets ready. And we'll see you on the next destination. Catch us again next time on Cities of the World.
From the White House to Gaza, Kiev to Beijing, elections, economics and the environment compete with conflicts and other complex issues for our attention. In an age of fake news, deepfake and artificial intelligence,
they've got to have a vote and a say.
It's important to look beyond the loudest voice to understand the truth. From newsmakers to groundbreakers,
my campaign is going very well.
Presidents, prime ministers, princes and peacemakers, and cultural tastemakers.
As Arabs, as Middle Eastern, we're too emotional.
Join me on the Riz Khan Show for empowering conversation.
Welcome to the metropolis. The big city. This is where tech, trends, and culture meet. Meet the people. See the sights. Walk the city streets. And experience the lifestyle. This is your first-class ticket to the cities of the world. Oslo, one of the world's largest capital cities, Oslo. What's remarkable about the place is only 20% of the area has been developed. And the rest of it are parks, protected forests, hills, and lakes. Parks and open spaces are essential in Oslo's landscape, and they can easily be accessed from almost any point from the city. The center is very convenient, with trails and passages that connect to the public spaces and pedestrian-friendly areas. Just the same, amid its natural attractions, Oslo likewise boasts a rich cultural scene you should see. Among its famous landmarks are the sculptures of Gustav Vigeland. You can stroll through the town center to witness many of its historical structures. One of the popular attractions is the 1,000-year-old Viking ship. Get to know the Norwegian capital better by walking through the old neighborhoods in the Oslo Fjord. The districts are near the famous landmarks, such as the National Opera and Ballet Building, a testament to their rich culture. Then, of course, there's the popular Akershus Fortress. It offers great views of the harbors. Nearby, there is the Museum of the Norwegian Resistance, and a chapel which houses the remains of the original medieval castle. You'll also see the weapons of the armed forces and find out about their defense groups. There's the center of government and administration, the City Hall and Parliament. The City Hall is one of Oslo's greatest landmarks. It is enormously huge, with an imposing square building that's built of concrete faced with brick. One of the towers has the 38 bells that you can hear all the way to the harbor area. The hall is filled with sculptures and relics, and the interiors are magnificent too. It was built and designed by the most famous Norwegian artists. Parks and open spaces are the pride of Oslo, and one of the famous ones is the celebrated Vigeland Sculpture Park. You'll be amazed at its lush green grounds that are decorated with figures of bronze, granite, and forged iron. These figures represent human emotions from happiness to despair. A trip to the Big Doi Peninsula is also great for its historical background and fantastic scenery. You'll definitely marvel at how these were made in the eras back then. It's time for us to go. Pack your bags and get your tickets ready. And we'll see you on the next destination. Catch us again next time on Cities of the World.
Now, Saudi Arabia is continuing to advance its status as a global aviation hub, and in line with the Saudi aviation strategy, the kingdom aims to see passenger capacity rise to 330 million passengers per year and 4.5 million tons of cargo throughput by the year 2030. Well, Airbus is already a big part of that journey and has clocked up a series of major deals. Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Gabriel Semeras, who is the Airbus President, Africa and Middle East. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Let's just start by sort of really setting the scene for our viewers. If you could just tell us, what is Airbus's presence in this region and in particular in Saudi Arabia?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Airbus has been in the region for many decades, specifically in Saudi Arabia. We've been here for the last 25 years. Present in the three divisions of the company, as you know, commercial aircraft, defense and space, and also in helicopters. On the commercial aircraft, we obviously have more than 200 aircraft in operation with the main carriers, FlyNAS, with also Saudia, Flyadeal, the low-cost carrier of Saudia. And as you probably saw, recently announced some orders with Riyadh Air, the new airline of the kingdom, connecting the world. So we are serving Riyadh Air as well, soon to deliver some A320s to them. And also, we announced an order of 350s at the Paris Air Show, which will be coming very soon as well with the airline. Also, with the leasing company from the PIF, Abilis, we announced a big order as well with some 350 freighters and also some single-aisle A320 aircraft. So absolutely devoted for that. Obviously, the need, and that shows a bit the collaboration that we're doing with the Vision 2030, the need for aircraft in Saudi Arabia is growing. With this backlog, on top of the 200 aircraft in operation, we've got more than 450 aircraft to come just in Saudi Arabia. As you know, Saudi Arabia is attracting a lot of travel in the region, tourism, but also religious travel. In fact, 3 of the main routes, busiest routes in the world, according to IATA, are in Saudi Arabia. From Dubai to Riyadh, Riyadh Jeddah, and Jeddah Cairo, which is impressive. I mean, when you look at the ambition of 2030 of having 300 million passengers to come, they're already on the journey to that, so that's pretty impressive. Of course, we also have some activities with defense and space. The main one are the Eurofighter planes, which are obviously part of our consortium as well. We have a share in the Eurofighter consortium for those jets that are operated by the Air Force. The refueling aircraft will be called the MRTTs, which are to refuel the fighter jets, but also to carry transport troops, medical evacuation in international missions. There will be the biggest fleet with up to 10 aircraft coming in soon into the Air Force outside Europe. And of course, the military transport aircraft that we have, the C-295s, which have been operating in the kingdom for quite some time. And on top of that, if you add all the helicopters activity, we have more than 100 helicopters from Airbus flying there, with companies also from the PIF, like the helicopter company, private operators, but also with the Air Force and other branches of the Ministry of Defense. So quite a big presence, more than 400 employees now in Saudi Arabia. And as I said, we've been there for over 25 years.
Wow, so all of that happening, and you mentioned Riyadh Air, and we've had Riyadh Air on this program. Clearly, you're seeking to capitalize on all of that momentum. We have heard some reports that, sometimes it isn't possible for demand and supply to match perfectly. Is it going to be possible to deliver and, match the demand with Airbus aircraft?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, there's a huge demand for aircraft. We've never seen such a backlog. We've got more than 8,500 aircraft in the backlog around the world. There is a plan to ramp up production. So, for example, on the single-aisle program, which is one of our most successful programs on the A320, we're planning to ramp up to 75 aircraft a month. That is impressive, as you see. 75 aircraft in 2027. We've recently announced the opening of 2 new assembly lines, one in the US, in Mobile, Alabama, and one in China as well, which adds up to 10 assembly lines. Wide bodies as well on the 350 program. Currently doing a rate of 6 a month. Our plan is to ramp up to 12, so that's doubling the production of the aircraft by 2028. Similarly, on the A330, a bit more of a shy production in that sense, but still 4 aircraft a month, and in 2027 we'll be going up to 5 aircraft a month. So that's the plan. Of course, we see there is a growing demand, and we are ramping up, obviously together with our supply chain, to make sure that we can deliver to that demand.
Well, it sounds like you're firing on all cylinders at the moment. In terms of manufacturing, you mentioned various plants around the world. Any ideas that perhaps in the future you could perhaps do some manufacturing in this region?
Well, there's obviously plans in place. We look at the whole supply chain, the whole ecosystem. As you know, the aerospace industry is a highly regulated industry, so we need those suppliers to be at the real standards. Everything has to be certified according to certain standards, EASA, FAA. And we need those suppliers to deliver to quality, deliver to time, and to be able to match those needs on the production. We've done a scoping of the whole supply chain and the whole supply chain ecosystem in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You probably saw recently as well some announcements around qualifying local companies for the sourcing of titanium and aluminium. So there are partnerships we're building upon. Another good example is the partnership we have with SAMI, which is part of the PIF group as well, to do all the MRO activities for the military assets that we have in the kingdom. So indeed, there is a capacity, and we're constantly exploring the opportunities that we have in the kingdom with local supply chain.
And when it comes to sourcing talent locally, I know you've expanded quite significantly. We do sometimes hear from people that we talk to that finding the right people isn't always easy, given that the market is undergoing so much growth. Are you finding you're having to import talent, or are you finding the local talent you need?
I mean, if we look at the global market forecast for the next 20 years, we have a huge need for new aircraft. And as a consequence with that, we obviously need the people to operate those aircraft, to service those aircraft, and also even at the cabin crew to operate those aircraft. So yes, there is a huge need. Just in the region, we estimate the need of around 265,000 additional people. So clearly having those people properly trained is a must for us to be able to deliver in our commitments. So as Airbus, we are providing long-term partnerships. We are about transferring as well know-how so that we can develop the local ecosystems. And we're cooperating with a lot of these local stakeholders, universities, educational partners, training schools as well, to gear up all the workforce in order to be able to deliver those aircraft and the ecosystem to be ready when it has to be. So yes, human capital is part also of the Vision 2030, key aspect of the angle, and also a key aspect of our strategy in the kingdom to provide those needs in the country.
Okay, just talk us through your medium to long-term plans in this particular region.
So medium to long term, when you look at commercial aviation, I said that there is a huge need. The global market forecast indicates there is a need of around 3,750 aircraft that are required in this region in order to cater for that growth. And it's impressive because when you look at other parts of the world and the split between single aisle and wide body, it's in the Middle East. You see there is a 43% need on wide body aircraft. I mean, you've probably flown on routes from Dubai to Riyadh where you're operating an A380 aircraft for a 1.5-hour route. You don't see that in other parts of the world. And the planes are full. We have also with Saudia the high-density A330 aircraft, which carries up to 300 passengers, also on the same route. I mean, it's impressive, that growth. And we see it continuing to grow. And the establishment and obviously the growing middle class, not just in Saudi Arabia, but also in the Middle East, we see it growing above the GDPs. So obviously people have a need to travel, connecting families, connecting businesses, also transporting cargo, which is very important. So clearly there is a growing need. And we are there to support the airlines and to support the economies in that path of growth.
Indeed. I mean, I've been on an A380 very recently between Dubai and Riyadh. It was full. I mean, there will be people who are wondering why not produce more A380s, given that those planes are all operating at maximum capacity, as far as I can see.
Yeah, indeed. So the A380 is a fantastic product, as you say. In the UAE, we have Emirates, obviously operating the biggest fleet of A380s. But of course, we're looking also at innovation, new products. A350 is our latest generation aircraft. It's got brand new engines developed by Rolls-Royce, which are 20 to 25% more efficient than oldest generation engines. As well, 70% of the aircraft is advanced materials. So the A350 is the new standard, these new technologies, and it's also a fantastic experience. So if you have the chance of flying on an A350, you'll see the high quality of the product and the cabin that we can offer and the airlines can offer in such type of products.
In terms of making air travel more ecologically friendly, what sort of innovations are there at Airbus in order to meet that goal?
Well, I mean, obviously one of the biggest innovations is the development of those new products like the A350 that I was mentioning. Just providing that 20 to 25% more fuel efficient means obviously less CO2 emissions, which is already in that journey of what we call the net zero to 2050. Saudi Arabia, for example, is in that journey of renewing the fleets. They probably have one of the lowest average age of fleets around the world, which is already going in that direction of reducing the CO2 emissions. The second pillar that we have, where we are also advising and supporting airlines and also local producers in the ecosystem, are sustainable aviation fuels. We see this as the most immediate way of reducing, in addition to the renewal of the fleets. Clearly, the challenge that we have is the price of SAF and the availability of SAF around the world. But we believe it's clearly our aircraft, we are investing in them being able to operate on a 50% blend of SAF. By 2030, they'll be able to operate on 100% SAF. But of course, we need to develop that ecosystem. We're doing a lot of work with the Civil Aviation Authority in Saudi, who is a great promoter of SAF. And we want to support the ecosystem in developing that so that then we can continue on the net zero journey of 2050.
Okay, well, it's all we have time for, unfortunately, but it's been a real pleasure talking to you and finding out about Airbus in this region. Gabriel Semelas, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks to you, Tom. Thank you very much.
It feels like decades are passing by in a matter of weeks. Seismic shifts in the world order.
Never, ever will be part of America.
With so much happening and so much noise.
Whether it's political upheaval,
Canada has been ripping us off for years.
economic shifts or social movements.
And no one wins from tariffs.
I think America can be more friendly to the rest of the world.
The in-depth analysis and all the latest developments across the globe.
To have an inclusive policy together.
The meetings with Hamas gave me some hope.
We're in another nuclear arms race.
The most important developments straight to your screen.
Welcome to the dressing room.
I'm on my own. I need backup.
And an insightful look at the issues shaping our world today.
It was not going to happen, that war, and it happened.
Join us on Arabiya News, where the world talks.
Welcome to the metropolis, the big city. This is where tech, trends, and culture meet. Meet the people. See the sights. Walk the city streets. And experience the lifestyle. This is your first-class ticket to the cities of the world. Luxor, the famous city of Luxor, Egypt. On the outside, the city is admittedly not all that charming. So what is it that will make you visit the city, with its scorching hot weather and dust-choking streets? Dare to explore deeper into the sun and sand to find its hidden gems. Egyptian sites, monuments, tombs, and temples. Amid the ancient sites are modern attractions as well. First is the Temple of Karnak. It's a massive ancient site that has several different temples that are dedicated to specific gods. The hypostyle hall is a pinnacle part of this temple. The pillars, so grand, will make you feel like you're in the middle of a canyon with cliffs surrounding you. Visit this majestic place that will make you want to learn more about the ancient gods and their beliefs. Next is the Temple of Luxor, a rather easily accessible place right at the center of town. It was founded by Amenophis III, but altered in later years by Tutankhamun, Horemheb, and Ramses II. The secret is to pay a visit at night, as you will see the illuminated yellow lights that paint nicely on the ruins and statues. It's a calm and curious place to sit by and hang out, or watch the people or little children playing. There's also the Luxor Museum, another breathtaking tourist spot. It houses some of the most important relics collected from temples and tombs around Luxor. The Valley of the Kings is also worth the trip. You can access it from across the Nile from Luxor. It's tucked beneath a barren mountain, and you'll see its top like a triangular pyramid. The valley is hollowed out like an anthill. Buried beneath it are some of the most legendary pharaohs of ancient Egypt. It is considered a sacred place that secures and ensures eternal life. You will surely be amazed at the relics, reliefs, hieroglyphics, and spells plastered on the walls and carved into the stones. Nearby is the Valley of the Queens. The place has been hailed as the resting place of royal family members and relatives. It is where princes, royal children, and of course, queens are represented. And then there's Deir al-Bahri. It is the mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut, the only female pharaoh to rule Egypt. Its interiors are quite deteriorated, but the view of its facade, with its multiple terraces and colonnades, is impressive. Indeed, a visit to Luxor gives you a dose of heavy history and a culture you won't have in any other city. It's time for us to go. Pack your bags and get your tickets ready. And we'll see you on the next destination. Catch us again next time on Cities of the World.
Our allies, in many cases, are worse than our enemies.
Stay informed and connected with the latest international headlines.
There obviously is a risk.
From breaking news to in-depth analysis,
it would appear that this war is coming to an end.
Who buys this stuff? Investors, pension funds.
we deliver the most important developments straight to your screen.
Iran always wanted to deal with militia.
Join us for compelling, expert-driven conversations.
A curfew order has been established.
And an insightful look at the issues shaping our world today.
There are a lot of proposals about European architecture for security.
I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans, and this is W News.
We dealt with this when I was Chief of Staff in the first term.
Where you don't just hear the headlines, you get the full story.